One of the big glaring cons of selling property, particularly in Australia, is the cost of selling. I mean, the transactional costs. You've got, your agent's fees, and we're selling property at the moment. So you've got, first of all, things like getting the property ready for sale, say if you had to do any renovations or whatever. Then you've got potentially the fact that you've got holding costs because potentially it might not be, it might be vacant, so it's not occupied, it's not rented. You've got the cost of agents' fees in terms of marketing. So agents' fees in marketing. And then you've got the cost of agents' fees when you actually sell the property. Oh my goodness, it keeps going. And then you've got, well, if it's an investment, then you've got your capital gains tax. So I think I've just talked myself out of selling property now. Like, it costs a lot to sell property.
Yes. And don't forget the holding cost, right? If you're doing something to the property and, it's going to sit on the market for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, because a lot of people don't know how long the property is going to, sit on the market for. People do have unrealistic expectations when they are selling properties, right? People are not like selling cars or trading in cars that, oh yeah, I'm getting a new car. So, the decision making is a lot easier. And selling the house, people have this emotional attachment to the properties. And so, there is massive 3 to 4 months of holding costs attached to it because you might sell it in 3 months and then the settlement for 2 months. And so you're almost looking at 5 months before this property disappears from your property portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got the transaction costs, and those are hard costs. And you've got then in terms of, well, if you're going to sell something, more than likely you want to be able to use that money or whatever equity you've got to purchase another property. So on the flip side, you've got re-entering the market in terms of purchasing another asset. And so you've got stamp. So you've got, the big one there is stamp duty. And, in New South Wales there, if they've pushed across that you can spread that across for land tax. But majority, we've got a big chunky bit of stamp duty there. So again, the transaction costs that are involved.
And then there is, people, if you're buying investment properties, then there would be buyer's agency fees, there would be all of these costs for discharge and recharge and registering of title and insurances and, all of these costs basically counts. Conveyancing kicks in again when you're selling and buying. So all of these costs are basically transactional costs typically in selling the property, right? The worst thing is if you sell the property and don't do anything with the money. A lot of people sell the properties and keep the money in the bank account because they feel that, money in the bank is a lot safer, or, at least it gives them that pleasure that they are rich. Naturally, you're losing out on the equity growth. You're losing out on a lot of that opportunity cost side of things too. And so selling has a natural negative connotation attached to it. People don't want to sell the property. Even if they've made a bad decision about buying the wrong property, they would still not sell the property, right? Because they're like, from my perspective, right? Every time I think about selling something, I'd be like, I'm going to use this money, go back to the bank, get the loan again, the documentation, that comes with it, right? The hassle, right? The convenience that you have to let go is a big inconvenience, right? So it's amazing that, a lot of these cons play to your emotional side of you not making that call on selling a property. I've seen numerous number of times where people have put something on the market and then they'll be like, oh, we are getting a good tenant, and they'll pull it out. It happened to me once in Adelaide where there was this vendor and I was convincing her to sell a property, right? And so this is true story. I was convincing her to sell a property almost 1.5 years ago, and she was ready, right? So she did everything, fixed the house, and we were 10,000 away from making a deal. And so I came in an extra 5 and I said, look, it's $5,000. Let it go. Let's sell it. And so she's like, no. And so she was emotionally attached to the property, right? And so she put the tenants in, didn't sell. 1.5 years later, a month ago, I'm still talking to her and be like, hey, did you sell that property? She's like, no. And do you want to sell it now? And she's like, oh no, I've pushed the rent up. Maybe I'll think about it. And then the real estate agent convinced her. And as soon as she has spent the money on marketing, now she's like, okay, this is sunk cost. Now I need to sell this, right? And so she ended up selling it. So took 1.5 years of her, making that decision because there was an emotional attachment to that particular property.
Did the value of her property go up in the meantime?
It did, 100% it did. And it's funny, like when we were first buying their property, I was offering her 380, and she was hamstrung at 385, right? And I kept convincing her, look, the interest rates are about to rise. They're about to rise. You sell it now and, make a quick buck. You don't sell it and, it would be crazy. And she was very convinced, right? She was very convinced. And so she asked me point blank as to, okay, so interest rates so why are you buying it? Like, you're asking me to sell it. And it was an investment property for her.
Yeah.